In December of 1945, a farmer named Muhammad Ali was digging near the base of a cliff in Upper Egypt. His shovel struck something hard. It was a sealed clay jar, large enough that he hesitated before breaking it. Old jars sometimes held gin, and gin were not something you disturbed without care. He broke it anyway. Inside, 13 leather-bound books, papyrus pages covered in Coptic script, ancient, intact, hidden inside that cliff for over 1,600 years. What Muhammad Ali had found were the Nag Hammadi codices, a library of texts from the early centuries of the Common Era. Texts that represented a tradition so threatening to the early church that it had spent 3 centuries trying to erase every trace of it. It had failed. This is Gnosticism. The word gnosis is Greek. It means knowledge, but not the kind you acquire by reading. Experiential knowledge, direct knowledge, the knowledge of something recognized rather than learned. Gnosticism was not a single religion. It was a current running through early Christianity, through Judaism, through Platonic philosophy, that gathered around a specific set of ideas. Ideas that, once you encounter them, are very difficult to unfind. The first, the world you can see and touch is not the highest reality. It is a secondary world, created by a secondary being, and the light that gave rise to it is not from the source it appears to be. The second, something of the true light is trapped inside you, not metaphorically, literally. A divine spark fallen into matter that does not know where it came from, and that gnosis is the means of its return. To understand what Gnosticism taught, you need to understand how it saw the cosmos. Above everything, unreachable, unknowable, perfect, is what Gnostics called the Pleroma, the fullness, the true God, the source of all genuine light. From the Pleroma emanate divine beings called aeons, aspects of the divine paired in complementary qualities. One of these aeons is Sophia, wisdom, the feminine divine principle. In Gnostic mythology, Sophia acted without the consent of her counterpart. She reached beyond her place in the divine order. And from her error, something fell, not into evil, into incompleteness. And from that fall, the Demiurge was born. The Demiurge is the creator of the material world, not the true God, a lesser being, who does not know the Pleroma exists, who genuinely believes himself to be the highest power. The Gnostics often identified the Demiurge with the God of the Old Testament, the God of law, of wrath, of the material covenant. The material world in Gnostic thought is his creation, not evil precisely, but limited. A prison that does not know it is a prison. Here is what makes this more than ancient mythology. The Gnostic claim that what you take to be ordinary reality is a secondary construction, and that something within you carries a different origin, is not a claim that has stayed in the past. It is one of the most persistent ideas in the history of human thought. It appears in Platonic philosophy as the cave allegory. It appears in Hermeticism as the soul's descent into matter. It appears in Kabbalah as the shattering of the vessels. It appears in alchemy as the work of extracting the gold from the lead. Everywhere the Western esoteric tradition has reached, it has found some version of this claim. What you see is not all there is, and something in you already knows it. The divine spark within each person, what the Gnostics called the pneuma, the spirit, is, in their cosmology, a fragment of the Pleroma that has become trapped in matter. It does not remember its origin. It lives an ordinary life in an ordinary body in a world created by a lesser god. Gnosis is the moment the spark recognizes itself, not through faith in correct doctrine, not through ritual observance, through direct interior experience, a knowing so complete it cannot be undone. The Gnostic path was the path of that recognition. The purpose of the texts, the teachers, the traditions, all of it was scaffolding for a moment that had to happen inside. This is why the Church found it threatening, not because it was immoral or violent or disruptive of social order, because it located the source of salvation inside the individual, not inside the institution. A person who has Gnosis needs no intermediary. That is a claim no institution can easily accommodate. The Nag Hammadi texts were hidden around 367 CE. That same year, Bishop Athanasius of Alexandria sent a letter across Egypt ordering the destruction of all unauthorized, what he called heretical, scriptures. The monks at a nearby monastery chose not to burn them. They sealed them in a jar and buried them at the base of a cliff. They were found 1600 years later by a farmer who almost didn't break the jar. The tradition those texts represent did not die with their hiding. It went underground, into the esoteric currents that kept flowing through the medieval period, through the Renaissance, into the Rosicrucians, into the Golden Dawn, into the work of this channel. Carl Jung read the Nag Hammadi texts and said they described the psychology of the unconscious more accurately than anything written in his own century. The shadow, the projection, the inner figures, all of it mapped onto the Gnostic framework with an exactness he found uncanny. The spark that doesn't know its origin, the false god that believes itself the highest. The work of recognition that cannot be performed by anyone else. Sound familiar? Next week, we follow one of the threads that carried Gnosticism forward through the medieval period and into the Renaissance. A tradition that moved in secret, encoded in symbol and allegory, and produced some of the most extraordinary spiritual literature in Western history. This is The Hidden Thread. Subscribe if you want to follow it.